Okay, I think it's recording.
Okay. It's your Meemaw, and I'm going to read to you this book, Pippi Goes to School by Astrid Lindgren, pictures by Michael Chesworth. You can follow along as I read this story to you, and if you're wondering how you'll know when to turn the page, I'm going to tell you. Turn the page. Way out at the end of a tiny little town was an old overgrown garden, and in the garden was an old house, and in the house lived Pippi Longstocking. She was 9 years old, and she lived there all alone. She had no mother and no father, and that was of course very nice, because there was no one to tell her to go to bed just when she was having the most fun, and no one who could make her take cod liver oil when she was much preferring caramel candy. Once upon a time, Pippi had had a father of whom she was extremely fond. He was a sea captain who sailed on the great ocean, and Pippi had sailed with him in a ship until one day her father was blown overboard in a storm and he disappeared. Turn the page. But Pippi was absolutely certain that he would come back. Her father had bought the old house in the garden many years ago. While Pippi was waiting for her to come back, she went straight home to live at Villa Villacula. That was the name of her house. Two things Pippi took with her from the ship. A little monkey whose name was Mr. Nielsen. He was a present from her father. And a big suitcase full of gold pieces. Pippi had also a horse of her own that she bought with one of her many gold pieces the day that she came home to Villa Villacula. Beside Villa Villacula was another garden and another house. And in that house there lived a father and a mother and two charming children, Tommy and Annika, who often wished for a playmate. And when Pippi Longstocking moved next door, they got the best playmate any child could wish for, and this is the story of one of their adventures together. Turn the page. Of course, Tommy and Annika went to school every morning, each morning at 8 o'clock. They trotted off, hand in hand, swinging their school bags. At that time, Pippi was usually grooming her horse, or dressing Mr. Nielsen in his little suit, or else she was taking her morning exercises, which meant turning 43 somersaults in a row. Tommy and Annika always looked longingly toward Villa Villacula as they started off to school. They would much rather have gone to play with Pippi. If only Pippi had been going to school too, that would have been something else. The more they thought about it, the worse they felt to think that Pippi did not go to school, and at last they determined to persuade her to begin. "You can't imagine what a nice teacher we have," said Tommy artfully to Pippi one afternoon. Turn the page. "If you only knew what fun it is in school," Annika said. "I'd die if I couldn't go to school." Pippi was bathing her feet in a tub. "You don't have to stay so very long," continued Tommy, "just until 2 o'clock. "Yes, and besides we get Christmas vacation and Easter vacation and summer vacation," said Annika. Pippi bit her big toe thoughtfully, but still said nothing. Suddenly, she poured all the water out on the kitchen floor so that Mr. Nielsen, who sat near her playing with the mirror, got his pants absolutely soaked. "It's not fair," said Pippi sternly, without paying any attention to Mr. Nielsen's puzzled air about his wet pants. "It's absolutely unfair. I don't intend to stand it." "Well, what's the matter now?" asked Tommy. "In 4 months it will be Christmas, and then you'll have Christmas vacation, but what'll I get?" Pippi's voice sounded sad. "No Christmas vacation, not even the tiniest bit of a Christmas vacation," she complained. "Something will have to be done about that. Tomorrow I'll begin going to school." Tommy and Annika clapped their hands. "Hurrah! We'll wait for you outside our gate at 8 o'clock. "Oh no," said Pippi. "I can't begin as early as that, and besides I'm going to ride to school." And ride she did, exactly at 10 o'clock the next morning. Turn the page. The next day she lifted her horse off the porch, and a little later all the people in town ran to their windows to see what horse it was that was running away. Pippi galloped wildly into the schoolyard, jumped off her horse, tied him to a tree, and burst into the schoolroom with such a noise and a clatter, turn the page, that Tommy and Annika and all their classmates jumped in their seats. "Hi there," said Pippi, waving her big hat. Tommy and Annika had told their teacher that a new girl named Pippi Longstocking was coming, and as she was a very pleasant teacher, she decided to do all she could to make Pippi happy in school. Pippi threw herself down on a vacant bench. The teacher said in a very friendly voice, "Welcome to school, little Pippi. I hope that you will enjoy yourself here and learn a great deal." "Yes, and I hope that I get some Christmas vacation," said Pippi. "That is the reason I've come." "If you would first tell me your whole name," said the teacher, "then I will register you in school." "My name is Pippolotta Delicatessa Window Shade Mackerel Mint Ephraim's daughter Longstocking, daughter of Captain Ephraim Longstocking." Pippi's really only a nickname because Papa thought that Pippolotta was a lot to say. "Indeed," said the teacher. "Well then, shall we call you Pippi too? But now," she continued, "suppose we test you a little and see what you know. Let's begin with arithmetic. Pippi, can you tell me what 7 plus 5 is?" Pippi, both astonished and dismayed, looked at her and said, "Well, if you don't know that yourself, you needn't think I'm going to tell you." Turn the page. All the children stared in horror at Pippi, and the teacher explained that no one couldn't answer that way in school. "I beg your pardon," said Pippi contritely. "I didn't know that. I won't do it again." "No, let's hope not," said the teacher. "And now I will tell you what 7 plus 5 is 12. "Well, see that," said Pippi. "You knew it yourself. Why were you asking me then?" The teacher decided to act as if nothing unusual was happening, and she went on with the examination. "Well now, Pippi, how much do you think 8 plus 4 is?" "Oh, it's about 67, hazarded Pippi. "Of course not," said the teacher. 8 plus 4 is 12. "Well now, really," said Pippi, "that's carrying things too far. You just said that 7 plus 5 is 12. There should be some rhyme and reason to things even in school. Furthermore, if you're so childishly interested in that foolishness, why don't you sit down in a corner by yourself and do your arithmetic and leave us alone so we can play tag?" The teacher decided there was no point in trying to teach Pippi any more arithmetic. Tommy, can you answer this one?" she asked. "If Lisa has 7 apples and Axel has 9 apples, how many apples do they have together?" "Yes, you tell, Tommy," Pippi interrupted. Turn the page. "And tell me too, and if Lisa gets a stomach ache and Axel gets more stomach ache, whose fault is it, and where did they get hold of all those apples in the first place?" The teacher tried to pretend that she hadn't heard, and she turned next to Annika. "Now, Annika, here's a problem for you. Gustav was with his schoolmates on a picnic. He had a quarter when he started out, and he's 7 cents when he got home. How much did he spend?" "Yes, indeed," said Pippi. "I also want to know why he was so extravagant, and if it was pop he bought, and if he washed his ears properly before he left home." The teacher decided to give up on arithmetic altogether. She thought maybe Pippi would prefer to learn to read. So she took out a pretty little card with a picture of an iguana on it, and in front of the iguana's nose was the letter I. "Now, Pippi," she said briskly, "you'll see something nice. You'll see here an iguana, and the letter in front of this iguana is called I." "That I'll never believe," said Pippi. "I think it looks exactly like a straight line with a little fly speck over it. But what I'd really like to know is, what has the iguana got to do with a fly speck?" Turn the page. The teacher took out another card with a picture of a snake on it and told Pippi that the letter on that was an S. "And speaking of snakes," said Pippi, I will never, ever forget that time that I had a fight with a huge snake in India. You can't imagine what a dreadful snake it was, 14 yards long and mad as a hornet. And one time he came around and wanted me for dessert, and he wound himself around me and around me. But I've been around a bit, I said, and I hit him in the head, bang, and I hit him again, and bingo, he was dead. And indeed, so there is the letter S. Most remarkable. Turn the page. Pippi had to stop to catch her breath, and the teacher, who had now begun to think Pippi was as unruly and troublesome a child, decided that the class should have some drawing for a while. So she took out paper and pencils and passed them out to the children. Now you may draw whatever you wish, she said, and she sat down at her desk and she began to correct their homework. In a little while she looked up to see how the drawing was going, and all the children sat looking at Pippi, who was laying flat on the floor, drawing to her heart's content. But Pippi, said the teacher impatiently, why in the world aren't you drawing on your paper? Oh, I filled that out a long time ago. There isn't any room enough for my whole horse on that little snip of paper, said Pippi. Just now I'm working on his front legs, but when I get to his tail, I guess I'll just have to go out in the hall. The teacher thought hard for a while. Suppose we all sing a little song, she suggested. Turn the page. All the children stood up by their seats except for Pippi, who stayed where she was, down on the floor. You go ahead and sing, she said. I'll just rest myself a while. Too much learning tires even the healthiest. But now the teacher's patience had come to an end. She told all the children go out into the yard so that she could talk to Pippi alone. And when the teacher and Pippi were alone, Pippi got up and walked to her desk. You know what, she said. It was awfully fun to come to school to find out what it was like, but I don't think I care about going to school anymore. Christmas vacation or no Christmas vacation, there's altogether too many apples and iguanas and snakes and things like that. It makes my head dizzy. I hope that you, dear teacher, won't be sorry. But the teacher said she certainly was not sorry, most of all because Pippi wouldn't behave decently, and that any girl who acted as bad as Pippi, turn the page, wouldn't be allowed to go to school even if she wanted to, ever so much. Have I behaved badly? Asked Pippi, much astonished. My goodness, I didn't know that, she added. She stood silently for a while. And then she said in a trembling voice, You understand, teacher, don't you, that when you have a mother who's an angel, and you have a father who's a cannibal king, and when you sail the ocean all of your whole life, and then you just don't know how to behave in school with all the apples and the iguanas? Then the teacher said she understood and didn't feel annoyed with Pippi any longer, and maybe Pippi could come back to school when she was a little bit older. Pippi positively beamed with delight. I think you are awfully nice, teacher, and here's something for you. And out of her pocket, Pippi took a lovely little gold watch and she laid it on the desk. The teacher said she couldn't possibly accept such a valuable gift from Pippi, but Pippi said, turn the page, you got to take it. Otherwise I'll come back again tomorrow, and that would be a pretty how do you do. And then Pippi rushed out to the schoolyard and she jumped on her horse. All the children gathered around to pat the horse and to see her off. You want to know about the schools in Argentina, said Pippi. Easter vacation begins 3 days after Christmas vacation ends, and when Easter vacation is over, there are 3 days, and then it's summer vacation. Summer vacation ends on the 1st of November, and then you have a tough time until Christmas vacation begins on November 11th, but you can stand it because there are at least no lessons. You can stand it because there's no lessons, and arithmetic, they don't have that at all. And if there's any kid who knows what 7 plus 5 is, he has to stand in the corner all day long. That is, if he's foolish enough to let the teacher knows that he knows. If you have reading on Friday, and then only they only if they have some books, which they never have. Turn the page. But what do they do in school there? Asked one little boy. They eat caramels, Pippi decidedly. There's a long pipe that goes from a caramel factory nearby directly into the schoolroom, and the caramels just keep shooting out of it all day long, and the children have all they could do to keep up. Well, what does the teacher do? Asked another little girl. She takes the paper off the caramels for the children, of course, said Pippi, and then she waved her big hat. So long, kids. Now you won't see me for a while, but you always remember how many apples Axel had, or you'll be sorry. With a ringing laugh, Pippi rode through the town and through the gates so wildly that the pebbles whirled up around the horses' hooves and the window panes rattled in the schoolhouse. Turn the page. And that is the end of that. Pippi Goes to School. I hope you've enjoyed our story. I'm all done.
I thought there was a quiet moment.